And we've asked each of the panel members to provide us with a photo and share with us and talk about a memory of a memorable story of nature recovery. So we'll start off with you, if that's all right, Wendy.
Oh gosh, yes. Is the photo coming?
Yes. Yep.
So the photo which is coming is actually Lucas's fault, because rather recently Lucas reminded me of a piece of work that was done a long time ago now, actually, which was taking photos of immediately after fire and then some months after fire. So so these are the documents that came out of that work. And at the time, I remember all the media was using the D words, devastation, destruction, about the impact of the fire on the vegetation. And my learning at that point was, it's not devastated, destroyed. You know, it's not dead. So that was where I wanted to start.
Thanks,
Thanks
Wendy.
for the reminder.
Yeah, lovely. Good, and good to see connection amongst. Well done. We'll go to Lucas next.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my photo is a bit of a rumination on resilience and non-resilience. So some gum species have a remarkable ability to regrow their skin to a greater or lesser extent. So what you can see on the left-hand side is a brittle gum that just has a fairly narrow strip of live skin regrowing around a much larger dead trunk. If you go to the top middle panel, that is a snow gum up near the summit of the Cobberas, and the numbers show 1 where the original skin was that was burnt in a bushfire, 2 the second time or the first time it regrew, so a second generation of outer layer live tissue that also died in a subsequent event, and then 3 the next time that tree has now regrown its tissue. But look at the bottom. Also a snow gum on the Cobberas, 7 different layers of outer cambium. So that's a tree that over hundreds of years has experienced fire again and again and again. And to me, the reflection, if you generalise that to the landscape, is that everywhere in Gippsland has experienced fire many times before, and many different types of fire, short intervals, long intervals, severe fire, gentle fire, fire in winter. All these things have happened in almost every spot in Gippsland in the deeper time, and yet the bush is still there. So that message is that this is an incredibly robust system and it's going to recover. But the top right photo is another snow gum that has regrown its tissue, and then it snapped off in a wind event. So the message there is that sometimes things break. So the system is robust. Some species, some vegetation types are at risk of breaking. Fire can be a contributing event. There are other, of course, threats in the landscape as well. But the challenge for us is to think about which species, need to predict which species, which places, which vegetation types are most at risk, and really hone our efforts and our care and our concern, hone where they're most needed.
Lovely, thank you, Lucas. Faith, you've already shared some beautiful photos, but we'll go to you next if you like.
So this photo, when you first enter my house area, there's a garden on the side that before the fires was filled with my great-grandfather's roses that we got when he died. And when the fire came, it burnt down all the side panels, the fences on the sides. I don't think any of the rose bushes survived, but that bush survived with only one side being grazed, and I can't remember what the word is, but yeah, and that's the only thing that survived from the garden, and lived to tell the tale.
Thank you. And we'll go to Daniel. I don't think I've introduced, I think, as everyone else knows, we've talked throughout the day. So Daniel is the on-country manager at GLaWAC. So thank you for coming and sharing with us today. So I'll let you.
Thanks, Beck. The photo I chose is to remind us all, and that we're all a part of the landscape as well, and that whether we like it or not, or realise it or not, and each one of you are, and all of your families are, and this photo represents that. I think I picked this one. Jess took it of our crew did a burn just out here, which you've seen today. And Shay, who's a traditional owner of this area, was a part of that, and we're sort of got a bit of a foot in the DELWP conventional fire camp, and creating our own sort of approach to fire at the moment too, actively doing that. So to me, this represented that. So Shay's connection to it and all of our connection to it as part of the system, and the look on his face to me is sort of shows that we're looking towards a way that is maybe different to the way we've approached it for the last few years, from GLaWAC perspective. So he doesn't look particularly happy, but he doesn't look sad either. So I think he's sort of saying, well, we want to do it our way, and that's sort of GLaWAC's approach at the moment. And I think the fire, that's how we want fire. It's up to your knee, and it's not doing the damage that we've seen it do in other places. Thanks, Beck.
Great, thanks, Daniel. And Fern. So Fern Hames is from ARI. Thank you, Fern.
Thanks, Beck, and thanks to all the panel for the wonderful things that they've said. They really resonate. This picture for me comes from 2009. So a lot of my memories about fire are associated with those Black Saturday fires. And this was work that I was doing with Tamo, very much like the video that we saw earlier, getting into those sludgy streams to rescue fish in an environment which had a community which was totally shattered by a whole lot of trauma that had happened there. And we connected that community really closely with the story of what was happening with those fish. And it had a huge impact for both the fish and the community. And I see this cycle that happens. And the picture tells me that what happens with nature in all kinds of disruptions and disasters and small things and big things that happen in nature, it's in our hands. We have responsibilities here for how we care for nature and the things that we do for nature. And the fact that those hands are also charred and grubby and all of that, we are part of that system. We are part of nature too, and we are also caught up in these things that happen in nature. So there's a lot of connectivity and linkages between what happens in nature and what happens with us. And in Marysville, we saw this extraordinary connection with the story of little fishes that we rescued from the landscape and put in ARI for 2 years until that landscape recovered. And at the same time, people who lived in Marysville had to go and live in Melbourne or Ringwood or Alexandra or somewhere while their homes were rebuilt. It was the same story, and that synergy connected people very strongly, so that even today, in 2021, there are still people tightly connected with that story and tightly advocating for those little fishes because they've got shared history and shared story. So that connectivity at that time built this advocacy and action for those elements of nature in that local place and in that local landscape. And so we get this beautiful loop that happens when nature gets impacted. We step in and we do things to help protect nature, but through that we get a sense of hope and recovery and joy and awe. So it helps our own recovery, and then we continue to do things for that nature that help support nature. And we'll take just 30 seconds more to quote something, because when we arrived here yesterday, Daniel showed us this report that was just launched Thursday. new strategy, the Victorian Traditional Owner Native Food and Botanical Strategy. It's just a beauty. But it has this quote in the cover which really resonated for me. It says, "The way things are is not the way things have always been. And the way things are is not the way things have to be. We are guided by the resilience, resourcefulness and intelligence of our elders, past and present." That deeply resonates for me, and for me there's another verse, whatever, to that, which is we are also nourished by the joy and hope and recovery that we see in nature, and that we bring all of these elements together, and this is an effective pathway for us into a future which is going to be quite challenging. That's me.
Oh, geez, all right. Woo, heavy stuff there.
Breathe out.
I'm actually now going to open it up to the audience, but I'll ask the panel members. I might have to retell the question so the virtual audience can hear it. So has anyone got any questions for the panel members? Go for it.
I'm probably the least media savvy and the least environmentally savvy person in the room as a precursor. No one's mentioning brumbies today in relation to the landscape and in relation to the damage to the landscape, and I find that really surprising because we have brumbie management strategies. So I don't want to talk about brumbies because we've got the brumbie management strategy. What is our deer management strategy? Because loads of people have talked about that. What are we doing about the deer? And if we're not doing something about the deer, what should we be doing?
Who would like to have a go at that?
Before we pass to somebody to talk about deer, can I just say, instead of brumbies, could we say feral horses?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm completely okay with that. Feral horses, feral species.
So I'll just retell the question to the virtual audience. Are we okay? No, we're okay.
Yeah, we're just going to move the computer back.
All right. So the question was about deer management, feral species, particularly deer management, and what are we doing about it?
And if we're not, what should we be doing?
If not, well, yeah, okay.
Well, I'll have a shot.
Sure.
Others will, of course, have their own shot. It's a big and broad topic. Deer are everywhere through Gippsland and have had a tremendous impact. There is a new deer management strategy for Victoria. It'll be on the web, and you can Google that and have a look. But to me, I'd like to highlight one of the absolute best things that's happened as a result of this bushfire. One of the real silver linings is that there has been millions and millions and millions of dollars invested in controlling deer, both from aerial shooting programs and from ground control. And that's been done by a range of agencies working together with great success. So the great thing is we know it's worked. So we now know that it's possible to do something we thought was too hard, too expensive to operate at scale. We know we can do it now. We know how much it costs, and we're learning how much it takes to be effective. So we're learning how to fine tune this thing, and that's going to put us in a really good place, I think.
Great, thanks, Lucas. Daniel, I've actually got a question for you, if that's okay. You just mentioned before when you were showing that photo that into the future it does look different. What does that look like from a cultural perspective?
From a cultural perspective, so I guess we're working that out. So the important thing to remember is that the disassociation with culture has been fairly hard hitting for this part of the country, and so we need to and so one of GLaWAC's approaches over the last few years, well before the 1925s, we'd sort of started to go down this path, is to allow community to rediscover and reshare what fire in the landscape means for traditional owners. So we need to work out some ways that it's safe for them to do that. So we have a fire knowledge holder group, which at the moment is just men. We're trying to create one for women as well, so they can determine. And it's only got it's not overburdened with agency people or other academic experts. It's just community members and senior people who have some interest or knowledge in this, and it's a chance for them to come together and work through some some pathways for us to do it. And then that knowledge holder group will become some sort of an approving body as we get more active in identifying places where we want to put fire back in the landscape, and they'll be asking the young people who might nominate something. They'll be asking them why, and they'll be going through a bit of a process to do that. So the Victorian government has approved a cultural fire strategy for Victoria, which GLaWAC were a part of and support. And now we've created our own Gunai Kurnai cultural fire strategy, which is in its final sort of draft stages. And under that, there's a whole stack of processes and procedures and training which we'll sort of use to bring our people along. People like Kath, who you met this morning. So I can see her being very active in the future in nominating where she would like fire to be in the country, and then we'll have a female knowledge holder group that can help to make that happen. And then we've got a whole network of people like Shay and others, depending on the fire event and what culture has to happen, who will deliver it. So that's and that's we're going slow. We're going at our own pace. I'm wanting GLaWAC staff and traditional owners to understand that it's okay to go slow. That the fire that we had out here, whilst they were dressed in their green overalls and they had some DELWP fire trucks supporting them, it still can be, in my opinion, a cultural activity because they identified it, delivered it, and were in control of it, and the success is evident out there. So there's a whole stack of ways, I guess, of measuring how culture is connected to this, but that's just some of them.
Great.
It takes a while.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I add a comment to that?
Yes.
That's terrific, and it reminds me of one of the things I'm really hopeful about the future is that we are getting better not only at the knowledge that we have in particular disciplines and particular things that we do. Lucas talked about how we are learning a lot more about how we manage deer. Daniel's just talked about how we do fire. But one of the things that I'm really hopeful of and excites me for the future is about how we are bringing different knowledges together so that the combined knowledge that we have is much more sophisticated and useful and relevant for the complicated and complex world that we're heading into. So at ARI, for example, we've just put on a new postdoc who is specifically tasked with bringing together traditional knowledge, cultural knowledge and science knowledge into what this tells us about place. And I think that gives me great hope and excitement for what the future can be and how we be in place.
Thanks, Fern. Yes, Paul.
Dave, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but let's fast forward to 20 years from now when you're in charge. What do we need to be doing now? What do we need to be looking after?
I'll just repeat the question, sorry, Faith, so everyone can hear us on the virtual rooms. So Paula in the audience has asked, Faith, 20 years from here and you're managing the environment that we're in, what would you be doing? Just to put you on the spot, that is.
Like how everybody's talking about bringing back in the culture and the meaning of fire and reintroducing it, not like as a natural disaster, but putting it back in, like in 20 years time, like putting back in more endangered plants, endangered species, and putting more effort into that. Like I know everybody's here's like, yeah, but but like growing that and spreading it out more, and yeah.
Yeah, good work, Ethan. I think you've captured it beautifully. Is fire management looks different into the future, and we're all here with plants and animals and the environment and working towards it. Well done. Jo.
Yes. My question is that we all know lots of small communities were impacted by this fire, and these communities know their backyards and their local landscapes. I'm interested to know if you've got any thoughts about how we can amplify and support the community voice and contribution, and is this important?
I'm hoping that was loud enough that everyone heard that.
I can repeat it if you want, the key bit, loudly.
Yes. That'll give them time to think.
How can we amplify and support the community voice and contribution in nature recovery, and is this important?
Thanks, Jo. Who would like to have a go at that? Wendy?
I can have a go. There's amplifying it and then there's listening to it, right? So I think one thing that we can do is listen and hear. It's hard. I'm not expressing myself very well, but I think that that's really important. It's not just the volume; it's being heard. And maybe I'll just leave it there. It's just we need to listen to local people. They know their place.
Daniel?
I think good question, Jo. And we were talking about it earlier in the week when the Minister was here launching that strategy, actually. Talking about, from my personal experience, been involved in fire events since the first big one was 2003. And I'm reflecting recently on how different the response and post-fire events are at each big one since. I think there's been 4 of them that we've had to deal with. And I was connecting that to how the communities have changed as well. So I think, and that's going to continue to be the case. I think back to often the welfare checks. 3 was a bit of a head count, and then that was it. And these days we're very much focused on people's physical and mental health and all the aspects of that. And I know we're here to talk about the nature-based, but I think it can extrapolate in the same way. So I think the thing is, it's one of the frustrations I think we all have is that when we go through this, we almost have to feel like we're reinventing the wheel. Or what are we going to do now? And we're going to do something to fix it. But hang on, I was there a few years ago. Why aren't we just doing the same? And I suppose it's in this roundabout way is that it's we can expect to do this, be in this space again, and I think the only constant is that we're going to be constantly changing between now and then, and we need to be able, and all the processes and procedures that all these beautiful people here that are working on at the moment need to allow that flexibility, I think, to if we're going to respond better in the future. And I think that's from a people perspective, but also from managing our natural resource.
I would add something about why I think it's important. I mean, it's definitely important, but one of the things that's critically important for people in well-being and in recovery is a sense of agency or control over your life. I mean, this operates, everyday jobs, and it applies in all kinds of contexts, but it particularly applies in times of trauma or recovery, that people need a sense of control over their lives. So how can you have a sense of control if you're not heard and if you're not involved in the conversations where we're doing things differently and making decisions about what we're going to do next? So it's really important that communities do have that say, that it is meaningfully and genuinely heard and integrated into what happens next, because that gives people a sense of control and a sense of connection with others and what happens next. I think it's really important.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, Jess.
So this is a bit of a tip-off, because Wendy and I were having a chat in the lunch break, and we're both scientists, and we're used to presenting in very cold, analytical, here's the data. So it's been really refreshing to hear some real voices and community voices and a few tears and a lot of heartfelt discussion. But there's also a bit of an edge here too. So as Daniel mentioned, this is going to happen again. So how are you feeling about the future and where biodiversity is looking to this region?
So that's for me.
For anyone.
Did the audience hear that question? Did the virtual audience hear that question?
They haven't given us feedback.
They haven't? Okay. Let's just go with it.
That could take some time.
That's all right.
I can sort of
Maybe
I'll try and summarise the question
answer,
before I answer it. So
Yes.
what does that say? So the question was about, I'm a scientist, I'm used to presenting the hard, cold facts. It's it's refreshing to be in a room with non-scientists and to get to talk a little bit more about the other things as well that go on. But the question really is, how does that feel? It's going to happen again, and how does that feel? And the question was from my colleague Jess, and that was because at lunchtime we had a conversation where I was actually feeling quite wobbly. So, and I'm feeling wobbly now, excuse me. But, I've been doing this for 30 years, this wildlife conservation stuff. And we're talking about saving 14 koalas, saving a few fish and putting them over here. And I felt at lunchtime, and I'm feeling now, we're really at a knife edge. It's not the fire that's going to get these species that we share our home with. It's what we haven't done until now. And I feel responsible for it. But as Fern said, we go forward and we fix it as far as we can. But we're at a point now, I think, where so much damage has been done. It's not the fire's fault. Fire is part of the country, and sure, it's more intense and perhaps it's going to be happening more often. Our country is, well, bits of it at least, can deal with fire, but what it can't deal with is our neglect. And that's where I want to go.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
I'm a welfare worker, so all of these guys are environmentalists. I do the people.
Yeah.
So maybe I can add something to that.
Thank you.
Black Sabbath happened. How many lives were lost? Fucking terrifying. I packed up my kids, I packed up my dog, I packed up my cat, I left those boats and motorbikes, and I got the flip out. And nearly every single person did. How many people died over Black Summer? 4, 5. And a couple of those were workers, which does not underestimate the fact that it happened, but they were on a job and they were working. We're getting the people stuff right. We've got case management programs to support the people. We've got, as soon as we walk in, this is going to be emotional. There's your helplines. Before we even sat down this morning, we knew that. Those of us that have had a moment have found someone else having a moment.
Yeah.
We're getting better at the people thing. To me, that means we're going to start looking after everything else, because we're not worried about our neighbours that have died. We're going to worry about our neighbourhood animals that have died. And what can we do? What plants can we put in our gardens, on our riverbanks? What can we do when we go up the bush? Let's enjoy our local area more. We can't go overseas. COVID's made sure of that. Let's look after our backyards and everything like that. From a people perspective, I think we've got much better at looking after the people in the fire. So for me, as a welfare worker, I'm looking forward to biodiversity, and I'm looking forward to the future that we know is going to have fires, and going, what about the environment now and where to from here? So I have really big hope.
Thanks,
From a
Michelle.
people perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did anyone want to add to this conversation before we move on, Mick?
I did want to add, and that's what I was sort of getting at a little bit with those incident objectives that we had, say, for that.
Do you want to just come up? Just make it
it
part of your time for you to
Speak right to the computer.
Yeah, just those incident objectives that we had, say, for the Howe Range. It took a bit of a battle to get them, but we had them, and once you got those objectives, then all the resources and everything flows out from that. So I think hopefully, yeah, we can move beyond just looking after life and property.
Yeah, I'd also make I'm still collecting my thoughts,
Sorry.
Wendy. But it's central to my work, and we've had these sort of conversations before, and I guess I've got two responses, and that's been the challenge of the day, has really been thinking multiple things at once. So the challenge of the whole last 18 months or so. One is that absolutely the biodiversity environment field has been underfunded, and I think we're up to $59 odd million of funding that is going in over roughly a 2-year period into what's actually a fairly small part of Victoria. So it shows that if we obtain that sort of money, we do have the means to spend that effectively, and we can operate at that scale, and it's lifted the bar for expectations about what it takes to do this. And I hope we then don't contract and start operating on peanuts again. The other thought though is more of a and it's away from your subject matter. It's more to the question of, this is going to happen again, Jess? And yeah, absolutely. And the question is, why is it going to be different next time? And I don't think we've got that answer. I don't think we've got it in a fire management sense. It's quite possible that in 5 years' time, given the same circumstances, the same result will occur. And so what is it that's going to be different? And I don't have the answer, but we all need to think really hard about that.
One of the things that was different in this fire was the response of the broader community to what happened with the environment. Partly because of the human trauma was still there, but wasn't that at our scale. But I think particularly because of the role of social media. So social media played this massive role in sharing images of koalas and various impacts on the natural environment, and that mobilised this massive investment of not only dollars but belief and energy and goodwill towards doing something for the environment. That was very new in terms of what happens in big fires in this state. So I'm hoping that that doesn't just generate that bit of funding and then that's it. I want to mobilise and maintain that rage, keep people actively wanting to support the environment, do things for the environment, invest in the environment in meaningful ways. So we need to sort of keep that conversation and that belief and energy alive.
That's wonderful. And that leads me beautifully into my my last question for the panel, and I want each of you to answer this question. If there is one thing, an action or particular program you'd like to share or empower people to do or to be part of, what would that be? I'll let you think about it for a moment, because I'm actually going to walk behind you because I want to close, but I want the virtual guys to see me do the close, because if not, they won't see it. It's easier than turning the computer. I thought about this.
Yes, it's choreographed.
Daniel, did you want to start? Stand behind you.
Sorry, I got distracted. There's some people coming here.
I can go. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
did you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure, Beck. Get out there and have a look. That's it.
Yeah, great.
My response would be similar, and I was thinking just stand in nature. It's not only the looking, it's the listening and the feeling and the being in.
Yeah. Faye?
Thanks, Faye.
Find where you want to be, like how you two said, like find a place in nature that you can grow and observe, but capture it, go there, like find your comfort zone, find where you want to be, your place.
Nicely said.
Seriously powerful stuff. Am I ready to come back?
Yeah, you can come back. And I think I'm thinking about challenge the way that we may have thought about stuff before.
Yeah.
So trying to think of new ways to do it better. It's, what we've been talking about.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, I'd have to give a plug for our grants. So totally, all of those things. You know, spend time in nature, be intentionally in nature, notice nature around you, you know, listen to it, smell it, feel it, be in it, connect with nature meaningfully, and do something with that to, you know, infect others. So, you know, earlier we heard about the nature-led community recovery grants that are now available, and there's a couple of things on set. There's little brochures at the back. If, you know, if any of this has inspired you to want to do something, these grants are about recovery for both people and nature together. They're about paired recovery. They're about connecting all of us with those stories and connecting us with nature as well. And there's a whole lot of other things that we're doing as part of this program, but the grants mean that anybody can get involved in this. And it might be, like Carmen said this morning, it might be, you know, citizen science. You want to go and observe something and document something that's coming back. You might want to take more photos and get an exhibition on the road and tell people those stories. You might want to do a walk and help people see the sorts of, hear the sorts of things that Hillary was describing to us earlier. I really want to go for a walk in the bush with Hillary.
I think we all do.
Yeah. You know, and share that story with others, because these are all stories of hope and they give everybody else hope. So this is all, you know, nice, and we've done bits of this before. The other part of this that we want to do is we want to evaluate how meaningful and effective this is, because all that we really have so far is stories that we think that this is good to do. And there is some evidence in other countries that this sort of connectivity and caring for nature does support recovery, but we don't really know that in an Australian or Victorian context. So, you know, I come from a research organisation, so of course we want to have some research questions around this and evaluate the effectiveness of this program as well. So that's what the nature-led community recovery thing is about. It's driven our desire to hold today and bring you together and have the sorts of people who are here today. I'm really happy to talk with anybody of you about what that means and what the opportunities might be. It's me and Craig Whitefoot up the back who lead this work, Craig at the zoo. And the grants are available at brv.vic.gov.au. Penny's here from BRV if you want to talk.
And also Megan.
And Megan's here, yeah, Megan's your local rep. Yeah. We'll be coming back again in May. We're going to come back and bring some scientists down and do the sort of stuff like you've done on Mallacoota with the boats, you know, take some scientists out, look at what's happening, let's talk about it. We want to do that sort of stuff as well. So we're deeply committed to this work, we're serious about it, we want to keep doing this stuff and yeah, keep talking with us.
Yeah, great, thank you, Fern. And that is right, this is not the end of the conversation, it's continuing on. And also just part of the day, so we'll send all registrants, presenters, the email addresses to follow up with conversations. There'll be a feedback survey. If you could fill that out, we'd love to hear from you. And there'll be links, is that right, Christine? There'll be links to all of the presentations.
Yeah, we're going to put a video together.
Yep.
Back to the registrants, and the survey link is also in the chat for the virtual people.
Okay.
And we'll email it to all the registrants.
Great.
Attendees.
Thank you.
Virtual people.
So, all the virtual people. We named the virtual people now, not virtual rooms. You've stepped up. So I hope everyone has had a wonderful day today. I know I have. I've learnt a lot. I'm always amazed by the expertise, the knowledge and the passion we have in East Gippsland. We live in one of the most beautiful parts of the world and we all know that and we're all proud of that, and that's why we're here. I'd like to firstly thank DELWP, ARI and GLaWAC. So particularly Christina and Andy, without you guys this day wouldn't have happened. So well done. I'd also like to thank all of our presenters today. The wealth of knowledge is very comforting. And also our panel members, thank you. You've done very well. And thank you to everyone for coming. I hope you enjoyed today. I know I did. And I'm sure we'll run into each other along the way and continue on this journey. So thank you.
And thank you to Beck.
Yeah,
and a shout out to to those in the virtual rooms, also satellite at Sarsfield and Malakuta. Thank you, and hope the IT glitches weren't too hard to handle. But we'll try and do this into the future as well. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.